Hello, brothers and sisters. Raven here. We are going to continue through this letter by Blair Adams to the leadership of Homestead Heritage. Now, as we've seen already, he has gone through this very much pointing out how they need to have this system he is writing about in place to sort of take his spot because his position cannot be filled. And we have recently seen a lot of him going into just the needs to be careful about letting people in that have left. And it's a little weird because now he's going to go into some precautions on that are kind of pointless, or things that aren't huge, but I will want to mention some things about. So the rest of this first letter isn't going to take long. I'm probably going to be able to have this video a bit shorter than the others, and we'll just finish off this letter. The next two, I hope to be able to go through in one video, maybe two. But we're going to finish this one today. And the reason I'm going to stop there is because of what's at the end. Because the end of it can seem innocent, may actually be innocent. But whether or not intentional shows a bit of how easily they are being blasphemous. So we'll get to that when we get there. But let's get started in moving forward from where we left off. Here's where he goes into his tangent. Of course, many recognize the potential evil of nepotism, have honestly tried to short-circuit it by seeking confirmation from others. But if these confirming ministries have not been ordained by God for this purpose, or if they prove unfaithful because of unseen motives or their own carnal nature and its self-seeking ways, then such confirming ministries and relationships are not only counterproductive, but will seal us in our self-deceptions. So nothing but a blabbering on of him about something he feels you need to be careful about. So let's just keep moving. Again, this is why I am now trying to take measures to remedy or preclude such potential problems. These measures include a new reinstatement board that will carry sole responsibility for confirming when wayward members of the church or the community should be reinstated and how. So here's where he starts to bring up bringing people back in. That is, one to confirm that the candidates for reinstatement have truly repented and won't pose a danger to others of the body. What kind of danger? 2. To confirm whether such candidates should at first come back only to Friday night meetings. Now this I want to point out. This right here shows you they do things differently in different meetings, and which meetings you go to depends very much on how devoted they think you are. So what you can observe, be part of, participate in, learn, all depends on your standing within their community. So when we go and we read things on their website, we should not be expecting they're showing us what they really believe or the entirety of what they believe. Because right here, it's showing they really want to limit people on what they can hear of their teachings until they're certain that they really are going to be loyal to Homestead Heritage. There's a huge flaw in that a lot of, that pretty much every call makes. There's a error in their thinking here. However, they have so much mind control, it usually isn't an issue. But one thing to notice is this is a paradox. You want to make sure they're devoted before you show all your teachings. Well, if they don't know your teachings, they don't know what they're devoting to. So they can't really be devoted to that. But because it's a cult, it's a devotion to the leader or leadership. The teachings are just something there to make it look like these men are wise, that you're following. You're not following them because they have wise teaching. You're following the teaching because you believe they're wise. That's the way the cult works. 3. To confirm whose group they should be assigned to in order to ensure the least harm to the body, if unfaithfulness should follow, and also in order that their own needs will be genuinely covered and ministered to. So, further along that road, same thing, making sure you're ready to be that deep into their group, that significant a part of their body. 4. To confirm what kind of public confession will suffice and whether a written confession and declaration is necessary, and so on. So note here, their rules aren't always absolute. It depends on the person. So how strict they are, what rules you follow, very much depend on who you are. But not really who you are. How loyal are you to the leadership? How loyal do they see you as? That's the question. And based on that, they decide, okay, what rules should we put on them? In other words, how much do we need to do to make sure we really control them? And they're not being themselves. Please notice that I have here repeatedly used the word confirm. This means that the main burden still falls on the group minister who originally disciplined the candidate and who will be heavily relied upon for his feelings as the board confirms or denies confirmation or makes suggestions as it fulfills its God-appointed purpose as an expression of the charisma of governments, there it is again, or administrations operating in the church. So he's very much treating this as a governmental kind of practice. And note, also, what he's doing here is going to contradict what he says later. He's saying, you need somebody who originally worked with this person. So somebody who really knows them well. I can understand that. But the reason that's important is a little bit of something he kind of overlooks later, but then even there he's hypocritical. And that's when he brings in family. We'll get to that in a second. But just keep note of that for when the time comes. If the original group minister has died or is otherwise permanently absent, then the parties in question should go straight to the board, who will then make the decision. Now there's some more things that are going to kind of contradict what he says here. He's saying go straight to the board to make the decision. Well, not exactly. Or at least make it appear as though that's not exactly what's happening. So let's move on to see where this goes. Others, of course, may have also ministered to the reinstatement candidate, and the board should listen respectfully to all such testimony. But the board members are not to be swayed by anything or anyone but God's Spirit, God's love, and God's truth, as he directly guides them in gathering information and in interviewing the wayward child of God. Not much to say about that. That's just them sounding Christian, looking Christian, but as we've seen many times, I see reason to believe they're not listening to him. They're listening to something else. So let's just continue. In other words, no authoritative word of confirmation is to be received as such merely on the basis of some unauthorized confirmer's stature in the body, but only because the Spirit has anointed the board to make such confirmation. Same difference. That is the dumbest statement. So the Spirit has anointed the board, but it's not by their stature. That's what that is. So such a witness's testimony should never be the sole basis for this kind of decision. He tried to make it sound like they're kind of putting themselves in a good place. They're not putting themselves under too much power. But really the reason he said what he said was for this part. Because he says, so such a witness's testimony should never be the sole basis or this kind of decision. He can make it sound like he's trying to keep the power of this board from being too strong, but no. He's trying to make the power of this witness's testimony over the board being too strong. In short, the board is not to let such a witness stand in the board's own place of responsibility in giving a confirmation. Note this, because this is going to come up at the end of the letter. This is something that happens over and over and over again. He starts off making it sound like he's, in a sense, keeping the leadership humble, when really what he's doing is he's taking away any influence of those of the body. It's going to come up again at the very end of the letter. So keep this in mind. This keeps happening. Any leader, then, who actively participated in the decision to disassociate or disfellowship, as distinct from more or less passively accepting such a decision or merely confirming it, should automatically be in an integrally working and ongoing relationship with the board until the matter is settled. Now, here's where it gets into the family side of it. I'm just going to read a small part of this so you get the idea of where he's going, and then we'll kind of jump ahead. No son, of course, should serve on the board if the candidate for reinstatement is his parent, parent-in-law, or potential parent-in-law. And a parent should not serve on the board if the candidate is a natural child or child by marriage, or there is the potential that they will become such. That's what this paragraph goes on about. It's just pointing out, keep people of any kind of family relationship from having a part to play in the decision. I just want to point out really quick, this is an issue I've seen in the church. I'm not just talking about Homestead. I'm talking about just in general in churches. And it can be either a abuse of power or it can be a fear of that abuse. So it can go too far either direction. And that is this fear of family. This fear of it being ruled by a family. Basically, following the old structure of one king being given his son all of his power and just going on one generation to the next. However, we've seen that is happening in Homestead. But also, I don't think it should be decided by family in any way. What I mean is, I don't think it should be where you avoid it or promote it. It should just not really have that big of a part to play in the decision. Because just look at Jesus' disciples. Many of them were very different from one another and had no relationship. But then there were others, multiple, that were very related to one another by family. He did both. So I never liked this way of making it so that no family or letting all family take control. Here, it's as though Blair is trying to avoid it being family, but from what we see in Homestead, it looks like it is all family. Hypocrisy. That's what happens whenever you start putting a lot of focus on something that shouldn't matter so much, that shouldn't be so central. So let's just move on, go into the next paragraph. Some might challenge that Paul made such decisions about readmission on his own authority in the Lord, as in the case of the disfellowshipped member of the Corinthian church, and that he was not even present when he did so. I would respond that his very absence seems to have helped ensure his impartiality, and that if I am appointing such a board, then I am acting in a function in the body where my voice in such matters might carry some similar weight. He just gave himself similar weight to the voice of Paul in his letters to the Corinthian church. He just gave himself the same weight as the Word of God. Once again, he's taking his place. As I said at the end of the last video, that's what I've seen by this letter, and I'm hoping more see it too. As long as I am alive and able, I would be willing to share my feelings, if I have any, when requested to do so by the board. Oh, wow, Blair, how nice of you. Can you believe the arrogance of that statement? He's trying to sound so humble in the way he words it. And yet, it's as though he's being so nice by offering to them his opinion. What a hypocrite. But I am also well aware of my own susceptibilities to the weaknesses spoken of here. Now remember this. Watch where this goes, because he's going to contradict this. Right here, he's trying to sound humble, as we just saw in that last statement, although the last statement he did it far more terribly. But watch where this goes, okay, because he's going to really try to brainwash and then actually make you believe the opposite. So watch. And if I faced similar circumstances, would feel the dire need for faithful brothers to truly confirm my feelings that I might have. If I faced. Reason he can say this is because he knows he never will, given his position at Homestead Heritage and how people see him. He knows he's never going to face this. That's why he's willing to state this. So he's going to continue with this. But again, as I've said, watch how he ends it. The brothers I have appointed, I believe, will stand at faith as faithful brothers to carry out this weighty and crucial service to the body. They will at first serve in a situational status. If I should pass on, then their status would be considered constitutional unless they were found to be in a sin that occasioned disassociation or totally nullified their credibility in the eyes of the church. You know that's not going to be something they're going to allow to happen. I have to say, constitutional. So much of the language of this is him putting his own government in place. He really is pretty much treating this almost as though Homestead is its own country. If one of them should for any reason vacate his position on a permanent basis, the others would appoint his replacement with the collective approval of the group ministers. The brothers are needless. Some leaders, I'm not going to dig into it. Although you will notice the last one mentioned is his son, Abraham. Kind of ironic with what he said before. I believe they will stand the church, its families and members, as well as its wayward children, in good stead as they minister in God's love and God's truth. If any of you have any questions, suggestions, or problems with this, please feel free to contact me. Note. Watch what he does. This part where it says, please feel free. Watch this next part and tell me if you think he is letting them feel free. I have written this hurriedly and in some physical discomfort, so I would like to pray and study more on the issues, and I'm open to your input in finding God's perfect way in this matter. I do feel, however, that most of this will be confirmed to be from the Lord. He says all these things after bringing up this idea that he pretty much has the same word as Paul had when he wrote the letters to the churches. It's as though this letter from Blair to Homestead Heritage should be part of the Bible. Then he goes and he tries to act humble, saying, oh, and offer me suggestions, advice, etc., etc. However, most of this will be confirmed to be from the Lord. He gives them the feeling he wants their correction, but then immediately after that, he gives them a feeling of judgment if they doubt it, because he's making it so that it seems like they are doubting the Lord. You blasphemous heretic. But watch the end. No, this is what I said at the beginning. This last sentence. I believe he's writing this, and try to read it this way, where his little sort of goodbye conclusion statement there at the end is part of the letter. So he's not doing this the way it's supposed to be, but watch what he says. In the burden and love of Christ, I am sincerely yours. So yes, I think he's saying, I am sincerely yours. However, doing it this way, note how that letter ends. With Blair Adams saying, I am. I have heard multiple members use that, whether claiming to be I am or saying they feel they are close to being able to state I am. I have heard them say this. Intentionally or not, this is indirectly brainwashing them to believe the body is Christ. Thus, they can state, I am. That's just how dirty a brainwashing this is. You can see by the end of this, by what you see in these last two sentences, Blair is doing primarily two things. He is making you feel he has the authority God does, because he's speaking God's word. And two, you better not question it. Even though he talks as though you can, he immediately makes you feel like you shouldn't. That's brainwashing. That's how it works. That's how these people who are so arrogant, stuck up, that they'll go and put themselves above everybody else to create this cult. And they can still seem so humble to the people who join. That's how it works. That's what this is. Now we'll go to the next letters next time. I don't know if I'll be able to go through all of it at once, because the next letter is a few pages. But the last one is really short. So if I can get through the next one, we can go straight through to the end. But we'll see where it goes. But that's the end of the first letter. Clearly, it's him trying to make sure he not only has a power over Homestead, but that his power over Homestead will remain in place even once he's dead. I really hope more and more people are seeing just how dark, twisted, and brainwashing the leadership of Blair Adams himself was in Homestead Heritage. I really hope it gets through. If it hasn't yet, we still got a little bit to go. And we'll see if that can open more eyes. I'll see you guys next time. God bless.